Tonight, U.S. officials fear what Vladimir Putin has yet to acknowledge, that a deadly explosion late last week in Russia was caused by a nuclear-powered missile. Today, Russian military officials called for the evacuation of the village of Nyonoksa, about 30 miles west of the coastal port area where Thursday's explosion occurred. They said it was because of military drills. But hours later, they called off the evacuation, even though independent groups have verified that some radioactive particles have very likely gotten into the air.
I think, a lot of other countries would have probably already evacuated the surrounding areas, but I think the Kremlin's a bit in damage control at this point. Damage control, experts say, because they believe the explosion may have tipped off the U.S. and others to information that Putin may never have wanted to become public. The 5 elite nuclear specialists killed in the accident were from Sarov, one of Russia's secret cities. During the Cold War, it was known as Arzama 16. The Russians have at least 10 secret cities like it, experts say, and they're the rough equivalent of Los Alamos, New Mexico, the birthplace of the first American nuclear bombs. The 10 facilities are going to be focused on the width and breadth of the Russian nuclear arsenal. So some are going to have to do with developing the delivery systems, missiles, or gravity bombs. Some are going to be more focused on the actual weapons themselves and processing the plutonium. Analysts say these secret Russian cities are even more closed off than those notoriously secretive American facilities, like Los Alamos or Area 51, the classified aircraft and weapons compound in Nevada.
Look, if you're a foreigner, you can't get anywhere near these cities. Sometimes they will grant foreigners access if you give up your passport, your phone, your camera. They'll let you in for a little bit, but that is very rare. Even for Russians, you have to go through a checkpoint to get in. There's sometimes electric fences around these cities.
Experts say many of these cities are decrepit, decaying, and have experienced deadly accidents with nuclear material and even anthrax. But they're still important to Vladimir Putin, who's developing an ambitious new weapons program, which includes the missile that U.S. officials say just exploded, a cruise missile with essentially a nuclear reactor on board, and which could have unlimited range. Experts say the deadly explosion is likely not on the scale of Chernobyl, the 1986 nuclear plant explosion which killed dozens initially and may have contaminated thousands more. Like this explosion, the Soviet Union at first refused to acknowledge the nuclear accident until the West detected high radiation levels over Europe. What the danger really is here is if the Russians continue to pursue these kinds of potentially dangerous and risky systems.
This is boot camp for recruits to a new army in the war-torn Central African Republic. The troops are being taught in Russian. The weapons are Russian too. It's taken months to get access to this camp. Officially, this is a UN-approved training mission. But the Russian instructors won't talk to us or even be identified, because they're not actually soldiers, they're mercenaries. Sponsored by a Russian oligarch with close ties to the Kremlin, they are the sharp end of an ambitious drive into Africa, stoking fears in Washington of Russian expansionism. Valery Zakharov is the man in charge here. A former military intelligence officer, he is now the security advisor to the Central African Republic's president.
Russia is returning to Africa. We were already present in many countries during the time of the Soviet Union, and Russia is coming back to the same position. We still have connections, and we are trying to reestablish them.
That's not the only reason they're here. The Central African Republic is rich in natural resources, gold and diamonds, and the Russians want them. We are on our way to one of 7 sites where a Russian company has been given exploration rights.
One of the challenges of trying to nail down exactly what the Russians are doing here is that once you get outside the capital, this is still a very dangerous and chaotic country. And just last year, 3 Russian journalists were actually ambushed and killed while working on a story about Russian mercenaries.
The drive is bruising and long, along rutted tracks to a tiny village of straw huts. And then we have to cross a river on this hand-pulled ferry. Local teenager Rodriguez agrees to show us where the Russians have been active. It's another bumpy ride through the bush. The last part of the journey is on foot.
Bonjour.
We asked the workers if they have seen any Russians.
Vous avez vu les Russes avec votre yeux?
Voilà.
Oui. Vous avez-vous?
Moi aussi.
Ouais.
Viens chercher le diamant.
So he's saying that earlier this year there were a lot of Russians here looking for diamonds.
Rodriguez says the Russians now employ hundreds of workers on artisanal mines like this across the area. In the pit, a group of teenagers pan through the sand in the search for a precious fragment. Whatever they find, they say, must be handed over to the Russians' agent.
So it's interesting, these guys are saying that the Russians who visited this spot actually came from the training camp at Barengo that we visited. It's pretty clear they're doing more than just training troops here.
CNN has learned that the mining exploration rights have been given to a company called Lubai Invest. Lubai is part of a sprawling business empire owned by this man, Yevgeny Prigozhin. An oligarch close to Russian President Vladimir Putin, he has been sanctioned by the U.S. for meddling in the 2016 election. And a CNN investigation based on hundreds of documents has established that Prigozhin's companies are also providing the mercenary muscle. He is believed to be the man behind Wagner, Russia's most notorious private military contractor. On our return to town from the mines, we notice we are being followed. We try to approach, but the car drives off. We catch a glimpse of 4 white males. All but one hide their faces from our camera. There is no license plate. Police later confirmed to us that they are Russians. Near our hotel, we spot the vehicle again. We try to get closer, but the men drive off.
So we're back at our hotel now, but a little bit shaken up because that car full of Russians been following us for quite some time. We don't know why. We don't know what they want.
Mindful of the murder of the journalist last year, we leave town the next day. But back in the capital, Bangui, Russia's growing influence is impossible to escape. On the streets, even on the airwaves. Radio Lengo Songo features African music and lessons in Russian. No surprise, perhaps, that it is funded by Prigozhin company Lubai Invest. The manager tells us the station wants to deepen cooperation between the two nations. And in a country where education and entertainment are in short supply, it seems that plenty of people are listening. American officials say they are greatly concerned by Russia's actions here and that they undermine security. But with the U.S. shrinking its footprint across Africa and with minimal official Kremlin involvement, Putin has little to lose.
For Russia, this is a straightforward bargain. They provide the weapons and the training, and in return, they get access to the country's natural resources. And in the process, they hope to reassert themselves as a major player in this region.
It's a campaign for hearts and minds and hard power. And Russia is moving quickly to get a step ahead of its rivals. Clarissa Ward, CNN, the Central African Republic.